What's up everybody, Meowth here. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the next big chunk of cards from Hearthstone's newest expansion, Madness at the Darkmoon Faire. So obviously as a Wild Hearthstone player and a Wild Hearthstone kind of channel, we're going to be reviewing the cards from, a Wild perspective. So a lot of these cards might be playable in Standard, and probably just are never going to see play in Wild, and so we're going to be kind of analyzing it from that point, or maybe vice versa, where there's synergy in Wild that's really, really awesome, that's just not really there in Standard. But before we get started, just a reminder to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Help me out in that YouTube algorithm if you guys enjoy this content. It's free, and it actually does support me a lot. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the Hunter Legendary, Maxima Blastenheimer. So this is essentially Flark's Boomzuka on a stick, actually on a minion. And I think something that I want to talk about is this is kind of how I think Blizzard wants to do this big archetype, right? So like big shaman, big priest, but for Hunter, where you get this minion, huge minion from your deck. It hits face, but they need to be big death rattle minions because that's kind of Hunter's identity, right? That's the gimmick with the big deck. Priest has resurrect, shaman has all of the death rattle, what is it called, resummon effects, right? The ancestral spirit and the reincarnates. Hunter has this big death rattle stuff, and it's a lot worse than the other big decks. But Maxima herself, 6 mana, 4/4, summon a minion from your deck, attacks the enemy hero, then dies. I just don't think, this Flark's Boomzuka, I just don't think the synergy is anywhere close enough to being playable in Wild. And I think a big part of that actually has to do with the fact that we just don't have enough big death rattle minions worth running. You have Scrapyard Colossus, you have Colossus of the Moon, right? Because you technically can get the Reborn effect off of that. It's not that great. You have Plagued Proto Drake, and those are kind of the big ones that I was seeing. Nothing else really stood out to me. And outside of Maxima and Flark's Boomzuka, you don't really have other ways to kind of cheat them into play, right? No Lightning Bloom, no Ancestress Call, nothing like that. So I mean, she's a fine card unless there's some big combo that I'm missing. I'm not super confident that this archetype's going to see play, and I don't think Maxima pushes it. Darkmoon Tonk. So I think what they're trying to do is push Oblivitron, right? I think Oblivitron's no longer even in Standard. I just don't think this card's good. 7 mana, 8/5, death rattle, 7 fire 4 missiles at random enemies that deal 2 damage each. Never sees play on its own. Might see play if you're going a big mech route with Sneeds and Oblivitron, but even then, that effect is not super powerful. If that's the big thing that you're cheating into play, yikes! You really want something that gets left behind, leaves behind a big body. So yeah, both of these Hunter cards I don't think are going to be very good. Don't think you're going to see a lot of play. So next up, let's talk about Sacrificial Performance. This is a 7 mana Demon Hunter card. Summon 7 1/1 Illidari with Rush. If they all die this turn, summon another 7. So basically how this works is if you have things on the board and you only summon 5 1/1s with Rush, all you have to do is have those 5 1/1s die, and then you get the second wave. They did confirm that on a Twitter post. With that being said, this is really, really expensive. So yes, it's 7 mana. So it's odd, right? Maybe Demon Hunter, but this is not what odd Demon Hunter wants. And other than that, there's no real payoff for this card, right? If there was a minion that, was on the... If you could stick 3/1, right? The 3 mana 3/1 Rascal Naga somehow, which is, almost never going to happen, then this card gets a lot better, right? Or if you wait until 9 mana and you can combo it with the 2 mana draw card for each minion that's died, yeah, then it's really good. But that's really, really slow, and Demon Hunter just really can't do that. In my opinion. So I think this card's cute. I just think it's way too slow. By turn 7, you're not able to punch through Void Lords. Priest is just gonna they have nothing for you to trade into, and if you somehow have a wave of 7 1/1s, then it just gets screamed into your deck and then you concede. So not a big fan of Sacrificial Performers. Renowned Performers, the next one is another Demon Hunter card. 4 mana 3/3 with Rush. Death Rattle, summon 2 assistants, 1/1s with Taunt. So 4 mana 5/5, 3/3 Rush. Feels really, really slow. This looks more like an arena card in my opinion. I just don't think that this is going to be strong enough in Wild. I think the 4 mana cost is a big limiter. If it was maybe a 3 mana, I don't know, 3 mana 3/2, Yeah, definitely I think would see play. But at 4 mana, I think it's just way too slow. So next up, let's talk about Hammer of the Naru. This is a 6 mana Paladin weapon. 6 mana 3/3, 3 attack, 3 durability. With the battle cry, summon a 6/6 Holy Elemental with Taunt. So I think the way that you look at this card is that it's a 6 mana 6/6 with Taunt. Battle cry, equip a 3/3 weapon. Just because like the ability to combo with Bran is probably super inconsistent. Would you play a 6 mana 6/6 with Taunt? No. Does getting a 3/3 weapon on top of that make it more playable? In my opinion, is probably not. Like I'm looking at this like OTK Paladins. Like I don't think this card's strong enough to push archetypes on its own. So you look at what archetypes it could potentially fit in. OTK Paladins don't want these. Maybe Reno Paladin. Maybe it wants it. Even Paladin, I don't think wants it. I think even Paladin wants to be a little bit quicker and spending 6 mana on big buffs, not just summoning bodies. So all that being said, like I don't think Hammer of the Naru is going to see play in Wild. I think it's probably playable in Standard. Like Libram Paladin doesn't want Hammer, right? That's way too expensive in my opinion. So it's a cool card, but I don't think it's going to be very good. So I probably won't see very much play. And now let's talk about the Demon Hunter Legendary. This is Il'gynoth. So this is a 4 mana 2/6 lifesteal minion. Your lifesteal damages the enemy hero instead of healing you. So this is actually a really, really cool, unique effect. I think it's the first time we've ever seen this. I think that this card is getting a lot of hype, but without seeing a lot of the other cards in the set, I don't know if it's going to be very good, right? Because right now the only lifesteal synergy you really have in Demon Hunter are Eldrazi Warblades and I-Beam. Il'gynoth is not going in your odd Demon Hunters, right? So the next thing you're looking at is maybe Soul Demon Hunter, right? Because you have the ability to get a crap ton of attack with the 5 mana 5/5. However, Soul Demon Hunter right now is just like not that great. It ends up being a pretty good deck against Aggro Druid in Wild, but just kind of loses to a bunch of slow decks. And maybe this is actually a way for it to have a chance against slow decks. It just gives you a little bit more reach since the lifesteal not healing you doesn't really matter too much. I will also say that there may be a potential combo deck in Demon Hunter to keep an eye on with Moarg Artificers and I-Beams, right? So with like an Emperor Thorson discount, or if you have the I-Beams in an Outcast spot. With double Moarg Artificer, those I-Beams are dealing, 12 damage each, right? And healing you for 12, so that's ending up being, 24 damage to the opponent's face. And you're playing Demon Hunter, so you can get damage into the opponent pretty effectively. And so maybe there's a combo deck there. I just, on its own, I guess you're looking at Soul Demon Hunter in Wild, and like you probably run it in Wild, just to give you a chance against stuff like Priest and Warlocks. But I don't think it's going to be enough to push those decks to be favorable against Priest and Warlock, which are like Soul Demon Hunter's biggest problems. And so I'm a little bit iffy, but I'm excited about the potential of this card. I think there's potential here, for sure. Next up, let's talk about Prize Looter. This is a 1 mana 2/1 pirate combo. Deal 1 damage to a minion for each of the card you've played this turn. I don't actually think, this is like a Miracle Rogue card. I don't really think you want this in Odd Rogue. I mean, maybe if you're going back to this Lackey and Flybooter style of Odd Rogue build, then maybe Prize Looter is good. But I'm actually a really big fan of the buff your weapons and hit face style of Odd Rogue. And so then maybe Miracle Rogue, but this doesn't really solve the issues of Miracle Rogue. I mean, it's nice. Helps you control the board early. And I might be wrong in just calling this maybe a better SI7 agent. You can tempo it on 1 if you need to. Or like backstab this is actually insane on turn 1 and rogues. For like those Miracle style rogues. If this could hit face, I'd be a lot more excited. But it probably doesn't hit face for a good reason. In Miracle Rogues themselves, while this might be a nice little buff to those Miracle Rogues, I think Miracle Rogues in general are very, very far away from being competitive in Wild. And so while this might see play in those decks, I don't think it's going to see a ton of play widespread. Next up, we have Ring Toss. It's a 4 mana mage spell. 4 mana, discover a secret and cast it. So this is basically the battle cry of Arcane Keysmith. Okay, on its own, uncorrupted, it's Keysmith without the body. Keysmith is nowhere close to being run in Seeker Mage, so you don't run it in Seeker Mage. If you can corrupt Ring Toss, you discover 2 instead. So just in Seeker Mage, discounted Cabal Crystal Runners won't actually corrupt this card, right? It has to actually be cast for more. So the only things that can corrupt Ring Toss are Cloud Prince and Alanath. And so therefore I think Ring Toss is just really, really bad in Seeker Mage. And then if you're looking at LPG Mage, I think I would still rather have the Arcane Keysmith, because most of the way LPG Mages are built right now are because of the ability to have 1-mana minions and Battlecry recursion via Brand, Potion, Barista, all that kind of good stuff. And so I think Keysmith is just a lot better of a card in that specific deck. I think the one deck that you can potentially look at maybe wanting to run this card is actually Reno Secret Mage. This is a deck that's, not really become super popular for whatever reason, but it's still a very, very good deck. And I think that deck is the one Mage deck so far, at least in my mind, that might want to actually run this card. It might actually be able to effectively. But I think this card is complete bait in Seeker Mage and LPG Mage for sure. Alright, so now let's talk about some Hunter cards. We've got a 2-mana spell, Don't Feed the Animals. Give all beasts in your hand +1/+1. Corrupt, give them +2/+2 instead. So this is essentially like Smuggler's Run for Beast. It's a little bit more expensive on the front end, but with it only being 2 mana, it's actually pretty easy to corrupt. I say easy, but like turn 4, give every minion in your hand +2 for 2 mana seems pretty strong. Especially if you're looking at playing one of those low to the ground Beast Hunters. This is just a way to cheat stats, which is what Hunter kind of struggles with in Wild right now, which is why I'm a little bit excited about this. I don't think it's going to be good enough in like those aggressive Beast Hunter builds, but I mean, these are along the lines of cards that they need, because they just need the ability to cheat stats, and this gives them the opportunity to do that. And then the next Hunter card is Petting Zoo. This is a 3-mana spell. Summon a 3/3 Strider, repeat for each secret you control. So this is basically like Spellstone for Hunter. The new Spellstone. Obviously the dream is you play a secret that can't be interacted with on turn 2, and then you play this for 3 mana 6/6. And so now, yeah, Secret Mage I think is getting some pretty nice buffs. You run both Spellstones and this, and Cloaked Huntress and Mad Scientist, and like 8 or 9 secrets, and you run Subject 9. And I think the deck is looking very, very solid. I'm a big fan of this card. I think it's very, very good. And this does buff, I said Secret Mage probably, Secret Hunter. But I think this buffs Secret Hunter a very fair bit, and actually makes it like probably a tier 2, tier 3 deck, for sure. I think the big thing that Hunter's going to continue to struggle with is the ability to recover boards, and I think potentially the inclusion of, depending on what your secret passage is, alongside like potentially running Broomsticks in Secret Hunter. I think that's not something I've seen before, but being able to give these 6/6s rush, or your Hunter Spellstone, being able to give that rush, I think is a very big deal at controlling the board. I think Priest is still going to be the big issue, in my opinion. Priest and Void Lords, but I think Petting Zoo is definitely a step in the correct direction for Hunter. I think this card's very, very good. And if Secret Hunter is seeing play, Petting Zoo is going to be a 2/0 100% of the time in those decks. Alright, so next up, let's talk about Revenant Rascal. This is a 3-mana 3/3 Battlecry. Destroy a mana crystal for both players. So on the surface, this card looks really, really bad, and it probably is really, really bad. But I'm going to put out some sort of theory here where I think Darkglare Warlock players might want to consider running this card over something like maybe the Cult Neophytes, because at the point that you're comboing off with Darkglare, right, once you're super far ahead on the board, you don't really care about your mana crystals. You really don't. You just care about your opponents not being able to clear, right? And that's why the Cult Neophytes were in there. That's why Lothab is such a good card in those decks. And Revenant Rascal actually, I think, has a little bit of a better role than something like Cult Neophyte, because it gets rid of your opponent's mana crystal, so it is making the spells technically cost like 1 more, in a sense. But it also potentially disrupts stuff like Risky Skipper turns from warrior opponents, which has kind of been one of the easiest ways to clear Darkglare boards. So assuming that Dark Glare doesn't get nerfed, I actually think Revenant Rascal actually makes its way into those decks, which is going to be really, really annoying and really, really disgusting, obviously. But outside of those Dark Glare decks, I don't think this card's going to see a ton of play anywhere. Next up, we've got Horrendous Growth. This is a neutral epic, 2-mana, 2/2. Corrupt. Gain +1/+1, can be corrupted endlessly. I think this is probably a standard or arena card. I'm not sold on this card's power level in Wild. 2/2s are just not strong enough. And then, like, you can always talk about potentially running these in, like, a Reno deck, but they're just, like, 20 better cards, I think, that you should run over Horrendous Growth, so I don't think Horrendous Growth is going to see a ton of play. Next up, Ticketmaster. This is a 3-mana 4/3. Death Rattle, shuffle 3 tickets into your deck. When drawn, summon a 3/3 teddy bear. First of all, the art on these teddy bears are the spookiest things I've ever seen, and I'm going to have nightmares. But on the surface, this card is like a Faldori Strider-esque effect, right? Where it's, you don't have the battle cry, which kind of sucks because it's rogue. But you also have the Death Rattle synergy available to rogue. I'm looking at this card in Odd Rogue. I'm not like I'm not 100% convinced that this card is better than the other 3-drops that we can run. For sure. It is a 3-mana 4/3, so it's decently statted body. But I think if you're not running either a ton of card draw in your deck, right, in order to maximize the ability to hit those tickets, or you're not running Stowaway, or you're not running Death Rattle synergy, this card is probably not worth running. But I think if you're running sort of a fun, shuffle deck, right, like Faldori Striders and Stowaways, then I think Ticketmaster is very good in that deck. And I think if you're running some sort of Death Rattle-y style, deck, right, with maybe Eggs and Unearthed Rapier, then I think this card's good in those decks. But I don't think the card itself is super powerful enough to just like slot into Odd Rogue on its own. And because of that, I don't think it's strong enough to like push these Death Rattle or Shuffle Rogue archetypes a ton. So like if I had on like a scale of like 1 to 5, I'd probably give it a 3. But 3s aren't good enough to push archetypes and usually aren't good enough to see a ton of play in Wild. So sorry, Ticketmaster. Alright, next up we've got Still Stepper. This is a 3-mana 4/1 Demon Hunter card. Battlecry, draw a card. If you play it this turn, give your hero +4 attack. So now this is actually a card that I'm actually really interested in potentially running an Odd Demon Hunter. I don't know how good this is going to be, but in Odd Demon Hunter your curves are fairly low anyways, right? You're mainly running 1s and 3s, and so this is another one of those 3-drops that are not an on curve 3-drop, which is really, really annoying, because that's kind of been the weak part of Demon Hunter for a little bit. But it gives you a little bit of gas in the mid game, right? Without Warglaives, Demon Hunter really just stalls out turn 5, turn 6 if you can't kill the opponent or snowball the board super heavily. And going like 3-drop into 1-drop plus hero power to fireball your opponent in the face, or 3-drop into 3-drop is pretty powerful. I don't know, it's probably not good enough to bring Demon Hunter like back into like tier 1 viability, but I think it's actually a pretty good tool potentially for Odd Demon Hunters to take a look at, because Demon Hunters aren't very good right now, right? And so any tools I think you definitely need to evaluate. But yeah, Stilt Stepper. I think I said Stilt Stepper. Actually, I think a card to look at. I wish this was like not 1 health, right? If this was a 4/2, I'd be like super happy. But at 4/1, you're a little bit more iffy because it dies to a lot more. But yeah, I think it's definitely a card to look at. Next up, we have the Priest Legendary, 4-mana 4/4, the Nameless One. Battlecry, choose a minion, become a 4/4 copy of it, and then silence it. So this is actually super spooky. I don't think this, I don't know, this probably finds its way into Arena Priest, right? Because of the ability to hit stuff like cubes or Void Lords. It's a little bit slow against stuff like Aggro Druids, but like 4-mana Ziliacs, right? 4/4 Ziliacs. I think it's good against Warlock, but I don't know how much help Priest really needs against Warlock, if we're being completely honest. And honestly, this screws with your hitting your Kazakus in your spawn. So in your normal Reno Priest list right now, I don't actually think the Nameless One is pretty good. It's a unique effect. Like, it's a Prince Taldarum, esque effect for priest. And so this could be neutral, like your own minions. It could also be opponent's minions. So I think this card has the ability to be like something that sees play eventually in the future. But right now there's one priest deck, because we haven't seen a ton of priest cards. There's one priest deck, and it's Arena Priest, and I don't think this slots into Arena Priest. So I don't actually think this card's going to see a ton of play, but that's with us seeing very few of the actual priest cards or other cards that have been revealed. Again, it is good against Warlock, but you don't really need all that help against Warlock anyways. Alright, so next up we've got Wicked Whispers. This is a Warlock 1-mana spell. Discard the lowest card in your hand, or lowest cost card in your hand. Give your minions +1/+1. So I'm looking at discard Warlock, and so this is basically... Would you... I guess I'd discard like a Flamewalker, a Voidwalker, Flame Imp if I have one of those in my hand to give my board +1/+1. Yeah, I think I'd do that, right? I don't know. I think the problem right now is that discard Warlocks have like 28 out of the 30 cards pretty solidified. That includes, I think, Voidwalkers being one of the flex spots. And so I'm not sure if you can fit this in. It is a very powerful effect, right? As we've seen with Mark of the Lotus, as we've seen with Grim Rallies before, as we've seen with all of these +1/+1 effects, they're very, very powerful for decks that flood the board. And Discard Warlock is another one of those decks that floods the board early in the game. And so I think Wicked Whispers actually has a lot of potential in Discard Warlock. I think you'll probably need to be revising how you're building the deck, right? Because you somehow have to fit this in. But I do think, these 1-mana buff your boards are always very good and always something you should be looking at for sure. Okay, so next up we have ETC, God of Metal. This is the Warrior Legendary 2-mana 1/4. After friendly rush minion attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. I don't think this card... I think the thing is there are very few rush minions that you're like happy running outside of Ziliax, right? And outside of Scion. And then Brute, obviously, in the Risky Skipper stuff. I've seen a little bit of rumblings about maybe running like a rush package in Pirate Warrior, but like I'm not like super happy with that. I think what you're looking at is Galakrond Warrior in this deck, right? Because you have Scion, which summons 3 rush minions, so you have Ziliax, and you have the Blood Boil Brutes. And so, like, are those on their own? I guess the Scions give you 3, right? So you have 6, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 rush minions that can attack. And that's a lot of damage. And so I think what you do is you experiment with this card in Galakrond Warrior, see if it actually... It's a 2-mana 1/4, so it's not like terrible body in the early game against stuff like Aggro Druid. And it allows Galakrond to push a lot more damage, which I think is really, really cool. And so I think it's definitely something I'm going to be messing around with. There's a couple other cards that we're going to talk about in a bit that I'm going to be messing around with Galakrond Warrior with as well. So it looks like Galakrond Warrior might be getting some pretty nice massive buffs for sure. Alright, next up we have Carousel Griffin. This is a 5-mana 5/5 mech Divine Shield for Paladin. With the ability to corrupt, you can gain +3/+3 and taunt. So uncorrupted, it's a 5-mana 5/5 Divine Shield mech. Pretty slow, not very good in wild. When it is corrupted, 5-mana 8/8 mech Divine Shield with taunt, which is pretty powerful. It's a really strong card, but what the hell are you running this in? Right? Odd Paladin's the only card above 5 mana is Baku, right? There's Quarter Creepers, but you're never playing them for 6 or 7 mana. So it never goes in that deck. Libram Paladin. What cards are upgrading your Griffin, though? Your 2/7 drops, your Libram of Hopes, and that's pretty much it. So probably not fitting in Libram Paladin. Mech Paladin is a much quicker deck than this. So I'm not seeing anywhere that Carousel Griffin, while the art looks pretty sick, probably not going to see play in wild. Now let's get to the last 2 cards of the card review. These are 2 that I'm really, really excited about, actually. The first one, we'll talk about both of them together. Ringmaster Watley. This is a Warrior Legendary, 5-mana 3/5. Battle Cry, draw a Mech, Dragon, and Pirate. So this is a Countess Ashmore Curator effect. Mechs, Dragons, and Pirates are all things that Warriors do, decently well. Mechs, Ziliax. Dragons, obviously. and then pirates. And I think we mentioned a little bit about Galakrond warriors. Let's talk about it. Let me go ahead and bring up the weapon as well while we're here. Ringmaster's Baton, 2 mana, 1/3. After your hero attacks, give a mech, dragon, pirate in your hand, +1/+1. This is just a lot of stats. A lot of stats and a lot of draw in Galakrond Warrior, which I think, it wants, and it's good, right? So if you're looking at Galakrond Warrior, a lot of them are running this pirate early game, okay? It even can tutor out your risky skipper if you would really need it. Mech, Ziliax, dragon, your Scions of Ruin. So immediately in your Galakrond deck, you already have the 3, so you don't even have to try to squeeze in some value here or there. And then Ringmaster's Baton. So if you're running double Corsair Cache, and you can hit the risky skippers off the Ringmaster Watley, then you probably could just get away with running 2 batons and 2 of the ritual choppers as your 4 weapons with double Corsair Cache. And then every time you swing, you're getting tons and tons of stats. And I think the one attack on this is not as big of an issue when you have the Galakrond invokes as well. And then there's no situational condition for this ability to go off, right? Whether it's hitting the face, there was the Paladin cards that would give your minions +3/+3 if you had overkilled, right? And we don't need to do that. It's just as long as you hit face or hit anything. And so I think these fit actually really, really nicely into Galakrond Warrior. I'm really excited. I think the big reason Countess Ashmore kind of fell flat on its face was that it was, first of all, it was 7 mana. And the fact that there just wasn't any good rush or lifesteal minions, right? So you were having to put bad cards in your deck to make Ashmore work. You're not having to put bad cards in your deck to make this card work, right? Because you're already running good cards. It's finding your Scions, one of the best cards in your deck. It's finding Ziliax, one of the best cards ever printed. It's finding your risky skippers or your Sky Raiders, some of the best pirates ever printed. And so I'm really, really excited for this. I think Galakrond Warrior is a big, big fan. I think if you're really trying to just run a Dragon Warrior as well, you're pretty big fan of Ringmaster Watley. So I think the big winner, at least from this early set of card reveals, is, I don't know if you're catching on. I think Galakrond Warrior, from what we're seeing, is big winner. I think Secret Hunter with Petting Zoo is getting a lot better already. I think Revenant Rascal is definitely something to keep an eye on, especially when it comes to Darkglare Warlock. And then the Hunter Legendary, I'm going to obviously try it out, but I don't think it's going to be very good. I have no reason to think it will be. But yeah, so that's a whole bunch of cards. I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of wild analysis and insight. And if you guys did, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your best cards from this set that we reviewed today. What's your favorite? What are you looking forward to playing the most? And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys around for the next card review. I'll see you then. Bye.